Bureau. This is Sports Talk Mississippi, coming to you from the Pearl River Resort Studios. Our friend Bill Bender from the Sporting News, always nice to catch up with. Bill, I feel like even if the first 2 weeks of the college football schedule didn't have like the greatest games of all time, I feel like each of the first 2 weeks has delivered pretty good drama.
Yeah, I mean, Florida State beating LSU, beating Alabama, a couple upsets in there, but nothing too major. I mean, those are heavyweight upsets because the underdog won. And in Texas's case, the underdog went into a place where not too many people win and won by 10 points. So I think those are the two obvious. And then the next one will be next week when Notre Dame and Ohio State play. Those were the three games that I had circled for September, and they've lived up to expectations from a drama standpoint. You're absolutely right about that.
Bill, did we underestimate the amount of attention that Colorado was going to command going into the year?
I mean, that's all I've wrote about for the last 3 weeks. So I would say, I remember Deion as a player, and it was a big deal. I mean, those Cowboys teams were a cultural phenomenon when he played. I know because I'm a Packers fan, they would beat him every year. So, the two. I will say this, and I don't think it's an understatement. I think he's made Colorado the most popular team in the country in 2 weeks, which is just out of this world to me. And he's driven interest in the sport. The numbers on that game were close to Alabama, Texas. That tells you all you need to know.
Second most watched game of the weekend, 8.73 million viewers, and it actually drew a higher rating than Alabama, Texas did. It's incredible. Now, I guess the second part of that question, or at least a follow-up, would be like, if we had known that Colorado was going to win at TCU, then maybe we would have realized what the hype was going to be. But because that win just took it to it was insane in Boulder on Saturday.
Yeah, and the first win did that because I just remember how it changed was in the first week I was just waiting for TCU to do something to win the game. Yeah. In the second week, it was, okay, how many points is Colorado going to win by? And the fact that they have superstar players that are easy to get attached to, whether it's Shedeur or Travis Hunter or Dylan Edwards, and you got Deion Sanders there, and you and I talked about this in the offseason. People have their mind made up on D. But if you like being entertained, I think it's good for the sport to have a person like Deion Sanders, who I happen to like, coaching kids. I think it's great.
Do you remember, Bill, when we were growing up, it feels like there were four brands that everybody – now, you grew up in the Midwest, so maybe there was one more. But I feel like everybody either had a hat or shorts or a T-shirt or a starter jacket from Florida State or Miami or Michigan or North Carolina. It's like those were the four. And I just wonder if we're like trending toward Colorado kind of being the 2023 version of that.
Well, I can tell you, growing up in Central Ohio, there weren't a lot of Michigan jackets. I can say that with safety. But the Miami one hit, and Florida State for sure, because they were Miami in particular was the cool program. You wanted to be cool. You wanted to watch Miami. Now, I went to a Catholic school, so, again, probably not a lot of Miami jackets as opposed to Notre Dame, but especially in the 80s. But it was a lot of fun, and I think Colorado's created that. The story I've been telling everybody the last couple of weeks is my sister probably watches 15 minutes of college football a year. And she called me. She goes, "Hey, Deion won." And I'm like, "Yeah, Colorado won." And so when you have that kind of appeal where you become more than just a college football story, I think Joel Klatt said it best. I mean, this is teetering on the biggest story in all of sports.
And as such, Big Noon Kickoff is going back for a second consecutive week, and College Game Day is going to Boulder. You may remember better than I. I don't remember both of them being in the exact same place, unless it was for a Michigan-Ohio State game in the last few years. Has that happened before?
No, I can't remember. It's like an Ohio State, Michigan, maybe an Iron Bowl, like one of those type environments. It doesn't happen often, and they know what sells. And I mean, I can tell you from our end, in the page view and impressions business, Dion is getting a lot of attention, and deservedly so. I mean, they've become this team, and it's only going to grow if they win this week, because the next 2 weeks they play Oregon. Remember, there's another program that's kind of built itself as the cool program with their uniforms, and then.
Sure.
I mean, what if they're 4-0 when they play USC and Caleb Williams? Can you imagine?
It'll be a show. And that game's at the Coliseum, right?
It is. And I mean, Caleb Williams to this point has played virtually flawless football with 12 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's averaging 16 yards of completion to his receivers. It's absurd what he's been able to do. You put Colorado in that environment. And again, I think people are just waiting. There are the Dion haters out there that are waiting for Colorado to lose. And I think that's something to keep in mind.
You know what's really fascinating to me about that game, Colorado at SC, if it sets up the way you just described a second ago, where Colorado's undefeated going in, L.A. is a stars town, right? Stars flock to interesting stories. Caleb Williams is obviously interesting. Clearly it will be a partisan crowd. But the flashy stars are going to be on the Colorado sideline. I actually would kind of be interested to see what the celebrity contingent that goes to that game, if they kind of gravitate more to the Colorado side of things.
Well, I mean, like Wu-Tang Clan and Michael Irvin and, those kind of guys were on the Colorado sideline last week. And I know Snoop and Will Ferrell have been on the USC sideline. You just said it. I mean, not to mention that another angle that will – Jerry Rice's son plays for USC. And we all know about the Jerry Rice-Deion rivalry. So it's great for the sport. Like I said, it drives interest. I don't know how long they're going to take this thing. I do know it's been a fun ride to carry through September. And every time, like you just said earlier, when you think about the fact that they had a higher Nielsen rating than Alabama, Texas, which was as big a college football game as you can imagine having in September, that tells you all you need to know.
All right, so on the Texas front, we pulled up their schedule yesterday, and Texas should be favored in every single game that it has played. It got past the first hurdle, right? It gets the massive win against Alabama, and they do it on the road, and they're really impressive. And to me, they weren't impressive just because of Quinn Ewers. They were impressive because of what they did on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Now comes, to me, maybe the more difficult part for Texas. Can they clear all of the other hurdles, all the games that they're supposed to win? Can they do this week in, week out for the entire year?
We're going to find out. I mean, they're going to play a lot of close games in the Big 12, and, that's part of the nature. Can they keep this momentum? They're playing Wyoming this week. They'll be fine, but the next 3 weeks, it's Baylor. It's Kansas. It's Oklahoma, the Red River Showdown, where they won by 49 last year. Can you do this every single week in a conference where there are a lot of one-score games? I was so impressed with their aggressiveness, the way Quinn Ewers played. You need elite quarterback play to go into Alabama and win. They got that. And like you said, now that people are saying Texas isn't back in a non-Twitter viral meme type way, I think that's the challenge going forward.
Yeah, not as a punchline. Has the group of teams that you look at as playoff contenders / potentially good enough to win the national championship changed at all through 2 weeks?
Well, I mean, there's 9 teams in the top 10 that look pretty good. I mean, I could see if they're going conference by conference. I mean, Washington, Utah, USC, Oregon, any one of them. Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State in the ACC, the SEC, Georgia, and everybody else right now. And then Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. So that list of teams that can make the playoff is about the same. That list, but I mean, the most impressive teams I've watched so far, and I haven't watched Georgia close enough, Texas, Notre Dame, and Florida State.
I agree. And I'm not sure that going into the year, if we had predicted after week 2 who the 3 most impressive would be, those are the 3 names you would have given me. Bill, always appreciate the time.
Okay.
Fantastic work as